I never thought I'd be the one sitting at the head of a family meeting, refusing to rescue the sister who once laughed at everything I stood for. But there I was, calm, steady, and resolute, while my parents looked at me like I was heartless, and my sister's husband tried to make my life's work sound like loose change. "We're not asking for much," he said. "Just sell the extra land. Help family. Extra land." That was how he described the heart of our farmland my husband and I had poured years of labor, tears, and hope into. Land my sister Vanessa once called a glorified backyard garden when she posted photos of her penthouse view and mocked my dirt-covered lifestyle. Now that her luxury condo is being foreclosed and her designer handbags are listed on eBay, suddenly the dirt doesn't seem so beneath her anymore. It's strange, isn't it? How the people who belittled your choices the loudest are often the first to knock on your door when their castles start to crumble. This isn't a story about revenge. It's about roots, about building something real when everyone else is chasing illusions. It's about standing firm when those illusions fall apart. And yes, it's about saying no to people who never thought they'd need your help. Because when Vanessa looked at me across the room that day, tear-streaked and desperate, she didn't see the foolish little sister who married a farmer. She saw the woman who had survived every storm, who had built something with staying power, and for the first time in her life, she saw me. Let me tell you how we got here. Growing up, I was the quiet one, the earthy one, the one who liked to dig her hands into soil while my sister Vanessa mastered lip gloss and mock trial by the time she turned 15. Our mother loved telling guests how brilliant Vanessa was. She's got her father's mind for numbers and her mother's flair for leadership. When the spotlight landed on me, the tone shifted. Rachel's sweet. "She likes plants," always said with a soft shrug, like I was harmless background noise. Vanessa was 3 years older, but always miles ahead in our parents' eyes. She ran for student council. I built compost bins. She joined debate club. I raised tomato seedlings in milk cartons on the windowsill. We lived under the same roof, but it felt like different planets. At first, I didn't mind. I found peace in the things no one else paid attention to: the smell of fresh hay, the quiet buzz of bees in summer, the satisfaction of nurturing something from seed to harvest. While Vanessa was being courted by Ivy League recruiters, I spent my weekends volunteering at a community garden, learning from retired farmers who spoke with calloused hands and gentle conviction. By the time high school ended, Vanessa was already halfway to Wall Street. She earned a full ride to a private business school in New York, and the whole family threw a send-off dinner that felt like a coronation. When it was my turn to announce I'd been accepted to the state university's agriculture program, my mom said, "Well, at least you won't have to go far." That was the first time I felt the pinch. Not full-blown pain, just the sting of invisibility. But it wouldn't be the last. College was where I met Eli. He wasn't flashy, didn't talk big. He wore beat-up boots and knew more about irrigation systems than sports teams. We met in a soil science course, got paired up for a lab, and by the second week, we were finishing each other's notes. Eli didn't try to impress me, he just showed up, consistently and sincerely. He talked about land like it was something sacred. It remembers. He told me once, as we knelt together in a patch of loamy earth, "Everything you give it, it gives back. Sometimes slowly, but always." He understood me in a way my family never had. So when I told them I was staying after graduation to build a small farm with him outside town, the reaction was predictable. "A farm," Vanessa laughed. "Are you serious? Like with animals and tractors and overalls?" Dad tried to be diplomatic. "Just make sure this isn't a phase. You're a smart girl. You could do more." Mom simply asked if Eli came from money. He didn't. Our wedding was modest, a ceremony under the open sky. A borrowed archway, wildflowers picked the morning of. Vanessa showed up late, heels sinking into the grass, a forced smile beneath her designer sunglasses. She air-kissed both my cheeks and said, "It's cute. Very Pinterest." Meanwhile, Vanessa's own wedding had been held at a private estate in wine country. With monogrammed napkins and drone footage, she married Trevor McAllister, a rising star in private equity. They honeymooned in Monaco. We spent hours planting the first row of heirloom carrots. Still, I never envied her. Eli and I may have started with little, but everything we did with our hands and hearts. We rebuilt an old barn with salvaged wood. We turned overgrown fields into living soil. We sold our first dozen eggs at a roadside stand painted by the neighbors' kids. We grew slow, but we grew right. Vanessa, on the other hand, climbed fast and made sure everyone knew it. Their condo had a wine fridge worth more than my car. Their vacation albums read like luxury travel brochures: Santorini, Dubai, Aspen. My mother posted them all over Facebook. Vanessa's life is just amazing. Isn't it so inspiring? At Thanksgiving, they brought truffle-stuffed pheasant. I brought a pie made from our orchard's first harvest. "Oh, how rustic," Vanessa cooed. "It's so charming that you still do things by hand." She never asked how the farm was doing. Neither did our parents. They'd ask about the weather or traffic, or if we'd thought about doing something more stable long-term. Stability, to them, meant a salary, a boss, and health insurance you didn't pay for yourself. They didn't understand compost, or the satisfaction of harvesting your own food, or the slow but steady revenue of a community-supported agriculture program. They understood penthouses and promotions. So I stopped trying to explain. What they didn't know was that beneath the quiet, our little farm was becoming something real. Not flashy, not Instagrammable, but strong. We had regular clients, contracts with 2 local restaurants, and an online store that was slowly gaining traction. We were building not just crops, but community, and one day, I knew they'd come to see it, or need it. I just didn't expect it would happen the way it did. Our farm wasn't much to look at from the outside. A modest house with chipping paint, rows of vegetables in disciplined chaos, and chickens that refused to stay inside the fence. But to Eli and me, it was everything. We woke up with the sun, worked until our bones ached, and fell asleep to the sounds of crickets and distant coyotes. We weren't building the brand, we were building a life. Meanwhile, Vanessa and Trevor had just bought a second condo, this one in Miami, because, as she put it, everyone needs an escape from the city. She started referring to their penthouse in Manhattan as base camp, like their lives were some kind of glamorous expedition. Her social media was a parade of curated perfection: rooftop dinners, designer bags, weekend getaways. She made marriage look like a photo shoot. I made ours look like a pair of muddy boots drying by the wood stove. The comments from family started to change, too. Not just the subtle jabs, but open comparisons. You know, "Rachel, maybe you should take some business lessons from your sister. Trevor's already promoted, twice impressive." "Huh. Vanessa says you're still selling carrots at a stand." At first, I'd force a smile, explain that we were developing a seasonal subscription model, that our bees had begun producing marketable quantities of honey, that Eli had mastered a crop rotation plan to increase soil fertility, but their eyes would glaze over. They didn't want to understand, they just wanted to feel superior. It hurt more than I let on. Eli saw it before I admitted it. After one particularly harsh family dinner, where Vanessa had laughed about our farm chic lifestyle in front of everyone, he pulled me aside. "You don't have to keep proving yourself to them," he said, brushing dirt from my cheek. "Let the land speak for you." I wanted to believe him, but something inside me still ached for recognition, not applause, just acknowledgement that I hadn't failed by choosing a different life. The turning point came at our 3rd anniversary dinner, which we hosted at the farm. We'd hung string lights between apple trees, set up long wooden tables draped in linen, and served a meal made entirely from our own harvest. Local chefs had volunteered to help cook, and our guests included friends, restaurant partners, and even a food blogger who wrote a glowing review afterward. My parents came late. Vanessa came later. She arrived in a silk dress and heels completely unsuitable for the gravel driveway. Trevor wore a blazer and that same smug expression he always carried, like he was doing the world a favor by showing up. They stayed for dessert. "It's cute," Vanessa said, swirling wine from a bottle we'd partnered with a nearby vineyard to produce. "Very aspirational, rustic luxury," Trevor added with a grin. "This kind of branding is big in corporate retreats now." It wasn't branding. It was our life. Later that evening, as I helped clear dishes, I overheard Vanessa whispering to Mom, "We're looking at a summer property in the Hamptons. Nothing huge, just something to unwind. Trevor's bonus was insane this quarter." I caught a glimpse of her phone screen, a real estate listing titled $1. 9M cottage on Private Cove. It was absurd, and somehow, I still felt small in comparison, but something shifted that night. As guests complimented the produce, as the chefs thanked us for the quality of ingredients, as I saw the genuine pride in Eli's eyes, I started to see our life through different lenses, not through the filter of comparison, but through the reality of impact. Vanessa had a following. I had roots. Still, the storm was coming, and I felt it long before the thunder arrived. A few weeks later, Vanessa called me out of the blue, not to brag, not to belittle, just to talk. "Hey," she said, her voice lighter than usual. "Quick question, do Mom and Dad have, like, a lot of accessible savings?" I blinked. Why, just wondering, thinking of planning something special for their anniversary. It didn't sound right. Not from a woman who had once bought them matching Rolexes just because. I tucked it away, but I started to notice more cracks. Their Instagram posts slowed down. The lavish updates stopped. Then came the vague captions, "Trust the process. Growth takes discomfort. Learning to let go." When Thanksgiving rolled around, they arrived separately. Trevor looked worn, his hair slightly unkempt, his eyes bloodshot. Vanessa wore her usual armor, flawless makeup, expensive jewelry, but there was tension in her smile. During dinner, Dad, ever enchanted by Trevor's finance talk, asked about the markets. Trevor's answer was different this time. "Markets don't correct," he muttered. "They punish." Vanessa nudged him sharply under the table. After dinner, while helping Mom with the dishes, I asked, "Is everything okay?" Vanessa glanced around before saying, "Not everyone gets to play house with a hobby farm. Rachel, some of us deal with real stress." And I finally said it. "You think what we do isn't real. You think feeding 50 families with sustainable food is a hobby?" She froze. I saw something flicker in her face, guilt, fear, but she didn't answer. The illusion was fading. The mask was cracking, and I knew soon something was going to collapse. The call came just after midnight on a Monday. I was halfway between sleep and waking when Eli nudged me gently. Phone buzzing on my nightstand. The screen said, "Vanessa." I hesitated. Vanessa never called me not like this. Not at night. Not without an agenda. "Hello," I answered cautiously. There was a long pause, then a shaky breath. "Hey, little sis." She slurred slightly, her voice thinner than I'd ever heard it. "What's the secret?" I sat up slowly. "Secret to being so damn content," she said, the words tumbling out too fast. "You and Farmer Boy, always so calm, so boring, so stable. Vanessa, are you okay?" A beat of silence. Then "Everything's fine. Trevor's brilliant. Remember, everyone says so. Raised $2 million tonight for some children's charity or whales, I don't know." I heard a forced laugh, followed by a quiet sniff. "Vanessa, forget I called," she cut in quickly. Too much wine. Not enough. Whatever. Then she hung up. I sat in the dark for a long time, phone still in hand, heart heavy with a truth I didn't want to name. Eli turned over beside me. Everything all right now? I whispered. I think they're drowning. In the days that followed, I noticed more signs. Her social media feed was suddenly full of recycled posts, old vacation photos, motivational quotes about storms making stronger sailors. Their names stopped showing up in the society columns. The sparkle dimmed. And then, silence. No invitations, no brunches, no snide texts. Only quiet. Until the knock came. It was my mother, standing at the farm gate, wringing her hands like a nervous intern. I hadn't seen her in weeks. "Rachel," she began, eyes darting toward the house. "Could we talk, all of us, your father, Vanessa, Trevor, you and Eli? It's important." We gathered around our kitchen table the next evening, a place usually reserved for canning plans and seed catalogs. Now it held tension, steaming mugs of untouched coffee, and a stack of papers no one wanted to look at. Trevor looked thinner, paler, less polished. He sat stiffly, jaw clenched, arms crossed. Vanessa's eyes were puffy, her makeup barely covering the fatigue. Her hands trembled as she set down her cup. "I'll get to the point," my father said, clearing his throat. "Vanessa and Trevor are facing some financial difficulties, temporary setbacks." Trevor corrected with a fake smile. "Liquidity issues. Perfectly normal in high-stakes markets." Dad continued as if he hadn't spoken. "They're at risk of losing their condo. There's debt, credit cards, lines of credit, some leveraged investments that went bad." Trevor's face twitched. "Market anomalies. And," my mother added softly, "they've asked for help." I looked from one face to the next. "What kind of help?" Eli asked. Trevor leaned forward. "You bought 20 acres last year. Right south-facing slope, good soil. How much could you sell it for?" My heart stilled. "You want us to sell part of our farm?" "Not all of it. Just enough to cover our immediate obligations. Give me breathing room to rebuild." "It's not that simple," I said slowly. "That land isn't extra. It's integrated into our entire system. We've been prepping it for a year, soil testing, irrigation setup, pollinator habitats. It's part of our long-term plan." Trevor scoffed. "Come on, dirt is dirt. This is just sentiment." Eli spoke, his voice firm. "It's not just dirt. It's an ecosystem. Selling it would collapse everything we've built." Vanessa finally spoke. "Please, Rachel, we have nothing left." I turned to her, years of resentment rising in my chest. "You made it very clear what you thought of our life. You mocked us, belittled us. Now you want to survive off the same soil you once called worthless? That's not fair, isn't it?" Mom's eyes welled up. "Sweetheart, you know she didn't mean it. She meant every word," I said quietly. "At every family dinner, every wedding, every time she laughed at our rustic life, she meant it." Trevor's mask cracked. "You're seriously going to let pride get in the way of helping family?" "No," Eli said. "We're going to let survival get in the way of your entitlement." A silence fell over the room. Then, Jackson, calm, steady, and unmistakably clear, said what I had been too hurt to say. "We won't sell, but we're not abandoning you." Trevor raised an eyebrow. "Then what exactly are you offering?" I met his gaze. "We have a guest cottage. It's small, but livable, and we're hiring. We need help farm store, online orders, greenhouse maintenance. You can stay, you can work. We'll pay fair wages." "You expect me to be a farmhand?" Trevor snapped. I didn't flinch. I expect you to contribute. That's how it works here." Vanessa was silent. Her eyes searched mine. There was no smirk, no vanity, just exhaustion. And something else, perhaps the first flicker of understanding. What would my job be, she asked. I hesitated, surprised. You have a marketing background? We could use help with our online store, event planning, community outreach. She nodded slowly. Trevor stood up. This is ridiculous. This is beneath us. Vanessa looked up at him and said the words I never expected to hear, then go. And in that moment, everything changed. Vanessa moved into the guest cottage the very next day. She didn't say much when Eli helped her carry in the 2 suitcases she'd brought, one full of clothes, the other mostly empty. Gone were the Louis Vuitton bags, the curated designer ensembles, the heels she once insisted were her everyday flats. She wore jeans and a soft old sweatshirt I vaguely recognized from our college days. Her eyes were swollen, but she held her head up. She didn't ask about Trevor, and I didn't bring him up. That first week, she floated more than functioned. She showed up to help, but hesitated often, standing by the crates of harvested vegetables like she didn't know where to begin, furrowing her brow at the irrigation schedule pinned to the barn door. But she tried. On day 4, she followed me into the greenhouse, trailing behind like a ghost. Where do you want me? She asked. Over here. I handed her a pair of gloves and a small trowel. We're transplanting herbs. She crouched beside me, eyeing the baby basil with uncertainty. Her manicured fingers chipped, but still bearing the remnants of her signature gel polish, hovered over the seedlings. What if I break them? Then we replant. That's how farming works. You'll mess up. Things will die. And some will grow anyway. She didn't respond, but she worked in silence beside me until the tray was full. By the end of the first week, she'd stopped checking her phone every 10 minutes. By the end of the second, she was helping Eli load crates into the delivery truck and organizing our pantry labels with a kind of meticulousness I had to admit was impressive. It was during one of our late afternoon harvests, sun dipping low, our arms full of greens, that she finally spoke. I don't think I ever realized what work felt like, she said. Real work. Not emails, not spreadsheets, just physical, honest work. I glanced at her. She wasn't complaining. She sounded odd. It hurts sometimes, I said. But it clears your head. She nodded. That's the weird part. My body's sore, but my brain's never felt quieter. Over the next few weeks, she began to take more initiative. She redesigned our weekly CSA community-supported agriculture newsletter, streamlined the online ordering system, suggested adding a holiday gift box to our shop. She was good, better than I expected. One morning, she came into the farm store holding 2 jars of our herb-infused honey one with our original label, one she'd redesigned overnight. Which one catches your eye more? The new one was cleaner, bolder, modern, but still warm. This, I said, pointing to hers. Definitely this. Her face lit up, and for the first time in what felt like forever, she didn't look like she was trying to prove anything, she just looked proud. We hosted a small fall event at the farm a few weeks later, bonfires, hay rides, a pop-up farm stand. Vanessa coordinated the entire thing, and she was brilliant. She guided vendors to their booths, reorganized the entire layout when a delivery truck was late, and somehow convinced a local string quartet to play under the apple trees without charging a dime. That night, as the last guests filtered out and the fire pit's glow softened under the stars, she sat beside me on a bale of hay. I used to think I was successful, she said, because I had things, expensive things, because people envied me. I waited, but it was hollow, all of it. I didn't build anything. I just bought time, bought silence, bought distraction. She looked down at her dirt-caked hands. This is real. I reached over and squeezed her shoulder. You're learning to grow something. That's not easy. She gave a soft laugh. I used to think growth was just a word people used when they were failing. Sometimes, I said, Failing is the only thing that leads to real growth. Later that week, my parents visited. They hadn't been to the farm in months. I watched them step out of their car and look around, visibly surprised at how much we'd built since their last visit. My father ran a hand over the wooden sign above our market building, now proudly bearing the name Hearth and Root Farm. My mother wandered through the display's jams. Honey, soap, vegetables all labeled and arranged with Vanessa's new designs. This looks like an actual business, my father said, as if it were a revelation. It is, I replied calmly. Has been for a while. Vanessa emerged from the back room carrying a tray of samples. She greeted them with a smile, not the one she used to force at dinner parties, but a genuine, open expression that caught even me off guard. Mom blinked at her. You look different. I feel different, Vanessa said. I work here now. Dad raised an eyebrow. How's that going? Vanessa glanced at me, then back at them. It's the hardest I've ever worked, and the most human I've felt in years. There was a pause. Then my father cleared his throat. I think we owe you both an apology. I looked at him. For what? For not seeing it? For assuming the flashier life was the more valuable one? You built something real here, Rachel, and we were too blind to understand what that meant. His voice cracked at the edges. Mom nodded, her eyes glossy. We were wrong. About a lot. I didn't say anything, but I felt something shift. Later, as the sun dipped behind the orchard and Eli grilled fresh vegetables for dinner, Vanessa stood at the edge of the field, looking out over the land. I used to think money protected you, she said softly. That if you had enough of it, nothing could break you. But it turns out, the only thing that really protects you is roots. I stood beside her. And now? She smiled. Now I want to grow something worth keeping. The leaves were beginning to turn when we hosted the Harvest Market Festival, a yearly event that had started small but now attracted families from across the county. This year was different. Though, this year, Vanessa was running it. She'd spent weeks organizing vendor partnerships, redesigning promotional flyers, and setting up press coverage. She even coordinated a local radio segment the day before, which brought in a wave of new visitors. Her energy was tireless, driven not by image this time, but by something deeper. A sense of ownership, of purpose, and the farm responded. The orchard was bursting. Our gift boxes sold out by noon. The farm-to-table dinner that night, catered by 2 local chefs using our produce, was magical. Lanterns glowed from the trees. Guests dined at long communal tables set between rows of kale and herbs. Music floated through the cool air, and everywhere I looked, people were smiling, connected, grounded. The kind of joy that couldn't be filtered or staged near the end of the evening. Vanessa stepped up with a glass of cider and gently tapped a fork to it. May I say something, she asked. The crowd quieted. She stood in the soft light, wind brushing her now undone hair, wearing jeans and a linen blouse, nothing glamorous, nothing branded, just real. A year ago, she began, I thought I had everything. A successful husband, a high-rise home, a closet full of things I believed made me important, and then very quickly, it all fell apart. She paused, voice steady but low. I won't get into the financial details tonight. Just know that it took losing everything for me to finally understand what anything was worth. What real value feels like. She turned slightly toward where I stood with Eli. My sister and her husband offered me shelter when no one else did. But more than that, they offered me something I never expected: humility, dignity, and a second chance to build a life that matters. There was a moment of stillness, then quiet applause, but it wasn't the polite kind people give at speeches. It was warm, human. Later, as guests lingered and helped stack chairs, Vanessa and I sat side by side on the porch of the farm store, watching the lanterns flicker out. "Do you think he'll ever come back?" I asked, not having mentioned Trevor in weeks. She sighed. "He texted me the other day. He's in Chicago now, trying to rebuild with a different firm." "Same strategy?" I asked. "Same illusion," she said. "He still thinks this was a bad quarter, not a collapse. Would you take him back?" She turned to me. "If he changed. Maybe. But I don't think he wants to. I think he misses the status, not the life. And honestly," she trailed off, then said quietly, "I don't miss the fear. Every month, every bonus, every vacation, it was all borrowed time. I used to lie awake wondering if it would end. And it did. Just not how I imagined." Before I could respond, a pair of headlights swung into the drive. It was my father's car. Trevor stepped out of the passenger seat. Vanessa stiffened beside me. I stood slowly. He looked thinner, somehow both sharper and weaker at the same time. His once pristine blazer was wrinkled. His watch, his signature Rolex, was gone. "May I speak with you both?" he said. I crossed my arms. "About what?" He glanced at Vanessa, then back at me. "I owe you an apology." I didn't answer. He took it as permission to continue. "I was arrogant. I mocked the way you lived because it scared me, because deep down, I knew I couldn't survive in your world, but I needed to believe you were foolish for choosing it, that your life was small, that mine was superior." Vanessa said nothing, her arms wrapped around herself. "But I was wrong," he admitted. "You built something that endures, and I built castles on air." He looked back at the darkened barn, the glow still clinging to the horizon. "I lost everything," he said. "The job, the condo, even the friends who said they'd ride or die." He swallowed. "I came to say, I understand now, and I'm sorry." I nodded once. "It's not me you need to say that to." He turned to Vanessa. "I didn't listen," he said. "You were trying to hold it together, and I kept telling you to double down. You asked for help, and I gave you pressure. You needed truth, and I gave you performance." Vanessa's voice was low. "Why now?" Because the silence was louder than I expected. And the only picture that kept coming to mind wasn't the penthouse, or the Porsche, or any of the things we lost. It was you, standing in this field, laughing. She exhaled. "Trevor, I forgave you a long time ago, but I don't want the version of you who needs to win every room. I want the one who can carry a crate of onions and still feel whole." He let out a half laugh, then looked at the ground. "I don't know if I can be that man." "Then don't come back until you are," she said. Trevor nodded, eyes misting, and walked back to the car. We watched them drive away. Vanessa didn't speak, just rested her head lightly against my shoulder. "You okay?" I asked. "I'm not sure," she said, "but I know I'm in the right place to figure it out." And for the first time, I believed her. Autumn faded slowly into winter, but the fields didn't sleep. Not really. Eli had built insulated cold frames, and our greenhouse kept buzzing with activity. Carrots, kale, and spinach all thrived in the crisp air, and our holiday market was gaining attention in neighboring counties. Vanessa threw herself into the work, not like someone trying to escape the past, but like someone finally choosing to plant roots. She wore thermals under her jeans now, and kept a notebook tucked into her back pocket full of marketing ideas and sketches for seasonal packaging. The designer in her hadn't died. It had just been reborn in the dirt. She started a blog, too, Harvest and Grace, sharing stories about starting over, the therapy of tending soil, and how simplicity doesn't mean smallness. Within a month, she had over 8,000 subscribers. People wrote in to say she gave them hope. Her vulnerability reached further than any curated brunch photo ever had. And through it all, we worked, shoulder to shoulder, No titles, no judgment, just sweat, laughter, and the kind of quiet honesty that only happens when you're hauling produce side by side in the cold. One snowy afternoon, while restocking shelves in the farm store, Vanessa turned to me. "Do you think Mom and Dad are proud of us now?" she asked. Not bitterly, just curiously. I thought for a moment. Maybe? Or maybe they're learning how to be. She smiled softly. That's enough, I think. They had started visiting more often. At first, they hovered awkwardly, unsure of what to say or how to help. But over time, things shifted. Dad began asking Eli questions, not vague ones, but real, detailed ones about irrigation, logistics, profit margins. He started coming out on Saturdays to help maintain the equipment, and even fixed a pulley in the barn that had been giving us trouble for months. Mom surprised us one Sunday by showing up early with hot coffee and a tray of muffins. "I thought the store would be busy today," she said. "I can help run the register." She'd never even stepped behind a counter before. That morning, I watched her fumble with the card reader and apologize to a young couple who were perfectly patient, but when they left with their jars of jam and smiled, Mom beamed. "Did you see that?" she whispered, like it was a magic trick. They loved it. Vanessa and I exchanged a glance and laughed. Later that night, we ate dinner together in the farmhouse. Eli, Vanessa, me, and our parents crowded around the old pine table that still bore scratches from its former life. The food was simple, the laughter real. No one mentioned Trevor. No one needed to. As we cleared plates, my father lingered near the window, watching the snow fall over the greenhouse in the distance. "This place is something else," he said. "It's ours," I said gently, "built from nothing." He turned to me, and to Vanessa. "I was wrong," he said quietly, "about a lot of things. I thought I was helping by pushing you toward success, but I didn't understand what real success looked like." Vanessa walked over and stood beside him. "You weren't wrong to want the best for us," she said. "You just didn't know what that was yet." He nodded slowly, then chuckled. "It's humbling to be taught by your own children." Mom wrapped her arms around both of us. "We're still learning." That winter was the first time I felt like we were truly a family without conditions, without comparisons, without hierarchy. We were just people, showing up, trying, growing. When spring came, everything blossomed faster than usual. Our soil had matured, and so had we. Eli and I expanded our CSA to serve 3 counties. We built a small classroom off the side of the barn to host school visits and agricultural workshops. Vanessa led a 3-part series called Marketing from the Heart. She taught other small farmers how to tell their stories, connect with customers, and build brands rooted in authenticity. People drove in from hours away just to hear her speak. She no longer needed the world to see her as perfect. She just needed to show up as herself. One evening in early April, I found her sitting on the porch swing, a cup of mint tea in hand, her eyes turned toward the orchard. "I got an offer today," she said. I sat beside her. "Oh, a firm in Denver. Ethical food branding. They read the blog and reached out, full-time, remote optional, 6-figure salary." I blinked. "Wow." She nodded. I told them no. Why, she smiled. "Because I'm already where I'm meant to be, and I don't want to sell the story of something I'm not living. I want to keep building this one." Tears pricked the corners of my eyes. "I'm proud of you." She looked down, embarrassed and a little amused. That used to matter too much to me. Now, it just feels good to hear. We sat in silence for a while, watching the wind stir the grass, the chickens cluck nearby, the bees return to their hives. Vanessa reached into her sweater pocket and pulled out a small, folded piece of paper. "I wrote something for the farm website," she said, "but I want you to read it first." I unfolded it carefully. It was a mission statement, but not the polished, corporate kind. It read, "We believe in soil that heals, in labor that humbles, in food that connects, and in second chances for land, for people, for family." I looked at her. "It's beautiful," she shrugged, eyes glassy. "It's true." By early summer, the farm was in full bloom and so was Vanessa. The transformation wasn't sudden. It had been slow, layered, earned, but now it radiated from her in the way she walked the fields with purpose, in how she gave tours to visitors like she had always belonged here, and in the quiet confidence behind her every decision. She was no longer rebuilding herself to prove something. She was simply living. And yet, the world outside hadn't completely let go. One morning, a white envelope arrived at the farm store. It was postmarked from Chicago. No return name. But we didn't need one. Vanessa opened it slowly, standing behind the counter with me nearby. Inside was a single typed letter from Trevor. "Vanessa, I won't pretend that I've changed overnight. But I've come to understand that the version of me you walked away from wasn't just arrogant, it was scared. I was scared to be ordinary, scared to be vulnerable, scared of being seen without the armor I spent years polishing. But you saw me anyway, and I wasn't ready for that. If you ever want to talk, really talk, I'm here. If not, I understand. Take care of yourself. T." She folded the letter quietly and placed it in a drawer. Not with bitterness, not with longing, just acceptance. "I hope he finds peace," she said softly. And then she turned back to helping a customer choose between lavender or wild mint soap, as if the past had knocked on her door and she'd simply nodded at it and then gone on living. Later that week, I found her kneeling near the herb beds, transplanting thyme. Her hands were covered in soil, sleeves rolled up, hair tied in a practical knot. I knelt beside her. "You've become a real farmer. You know." She smirked. "What gave it away, the dirt under my nails or the fact that I can now identify 3 kinds of aphids by shape alone?" We laughed, and for a moment, I saw a flash of the old Vanessa, the wit, the spark, but tempered now by something more grounded, something real. "You ever think about starting over in a place like this when we were kids?" I asked. "Never," she admitted. "I thought life was skyscrapers and promotions and champagne that came with a story. I thought success was being envied." She dug her hands into the soil again. "Turns out success is being able to sleep at night without wondering what you've lost trying to look like you've won." That weekend, she did something that made the shift undeniable. We were hosting a summer garden walk, a tour for school teachers who wanted to bring agricultural education into classrooms. Vanessa had helped organize the entire program. On the final afternoon, we gave each participant a packet of seeds and a small wooden sign labeled with our logo and the words "Plant with Purpose." As the last group wandered back toward the barn, Vanessa stepped onto the porch and addressed them. "I used to live in a world where seeds only mattered if they came in perfect packaging," she said. "Now I know that what matters is what grows, and what it teaches you about patience, faith, and failure." She paused, then smiled. "The best things I've ever grown weren't tomatoes. They were forgiveness, self-respect, and a life I used to think I wasn't strong enough to want." The applause that followed wasn't just for her, it was for the journey, the reinvention, the return. That night, after everyone had gone and the farm was quiet again, Eli joined us on the porch with iced tea. The air was warm, and fireflies blinked in the tall grass. "She's different," he said, looking at Vanessa as she walked barefoot through the yard, checking the irrigation hose. "She's home," I replied. Eli turned to me. "Do you think your parents ever imagined it would end like this?" "No," I said, "but maybe that's what makes it so right." When Vanessa returned, she sank into the chair beside me. "I've been thinking," she said, "about next year's plan. Oh, workshops, more blog content, maybe even a video series. Not just about farming, but about redefining success. I think people are hungry for that. Something real? I nodded. You want to tell people how you got here. I want to show them it's possible, she said, even after everything falls apart. She looked out over the fields, bathed in the golden hush of dusk. Do you regret how it all started? I asked. Vanessa shook her head slowly. Not anymore. Because if I hadn't broken, I never would have bent. We sat there, 3 of us, watching the moon rise, the rows of crops swaying gently like a quiet symphony. There was no need for more words. We had grown something beyond explanation, something that could not be bought or borrowed, something deeper than forgiveness, deeper than legacy. We had grown a life. A year after Vanessa first moved into the guest cottage, we hosted the largest event our farm had ever seen. The summer solstice gathering had started as a simple idea, a celebration of light, harvest, and resilience, but under Vanessa's vision, it had become something extraordinary. Local vendors lined the fields. A pop-up outdoor kitchen served dishes made entirely from our produce. String lights traced the old apple trees, and music echoed gently through the orchard. It wasn't flashy, but it was breathtaking. The day before the event, Vanessa brought out 2 carved wood signs she'd commissioned from a local artist. She handed me one. It read, "Hearth and Root Farm, a place to begin again." I ran my hand over the grain. This is perfect. She looked at me, eyes shining. So is what we've built. That night, as golden light spilled across the land, Vanessa gave a short speech before dinner. Guests sat at communal tables, some in sundresses, some in work boots, everyone with dirt under their fingernails or stories of what they'd grown. I spent most of my life chasing things that looked like success, she said, voice strong and clear, but I never realized that the strongest things we grow don't start on paper or in bank accounts. They start here. She pressed a hand gently to her chest, and here. She pointed to the soil beneath her feet. People listened. Really listened. I used to live in a high-rise, she continued, surrounded by glass and steel and pressure. I had a beautiful life on the outside and absolutely no ground beneath me. But when everything collapsed, my sister didn't say, "I told you so." She handed me a pair of gloves, and in the dirt, I found something I'd never had before, peace. She looked toward me and Eli, sitting at the edge of the crowd. Rachel didn't just save me, she showed me who I could become when I stopped pretending. The applause that followed wasn't polite. It was raw and full of recognition. After the event, as the guests departed and the sky deepened into navy, we stayed behind to clean up. Vanessa was barefoot again, walking through rows of leftover flowers, collecting stems to dry for fall bundles. Eli packed up crates, whistling low under his breath. I stood at the edge of the field, looking at the cottage. A soft light glowed from inside. A life once broken was now being rebuilt honestly, slowly, beautifully. Vanessa joined me a moment later, arms full of zinnias. "You think we'll ever fully forgive each other?" she asked suddenly. Not accusing, just reflective. "I think we already have," I said, "even if we don't say it every day. This place, it holds what we can't always say." She nodded. "Sometimes I still feel ashamed. For how I talk to you. For how I look down on all of this." I smiled. "Then you're healing. Shame only sticks when we ignore it. When we face it, it starts to compost." She laughed at that. "Leave it to you to turn emotions into a soil metaphor. I mean, it's all connected," I said, grinning. "Even grief grows something if we let it." The next morning, we walked the property together like we did every Sunday now. She checked in on the herb beds. I inspected the new greenhouse extension. We met in the orchard where a small wooden bench now sat beneath the oldest tree. Carved into it were the words she'd chosen, planted with doubt, grown with grace. It had become her favorite saying, and maybe mine, too. That evening, as twilight settled again, Vanessa sat down beside me on the porch swing. "I've been thinking," she said, eyes on the horizon. "What if we expanded our outreach program, more workshops, more schools, more people who've lost everything and don't know where to begin?" I tilted my head. "A second chance program, exactly," she said. "For women, for young people, for people who don't think they're capable of rebuilding. You want to make the farm more than a business." I said, "You want to make it a refuge." She nodded, because that's what it was for me. I reached for her hand. "Let's do it." In the months that followed, we did. We opened the New Ground Project, a seasonal mentorship program where people recovering from divorce, financial loss, addiction, or grief could spend 6 weeks on the farm learning skills, eating well, and remembering their worth. It wasn't therapy exactly, but it was healing. And every week, Vanessa shared her story, not as a cautionary tale, as a testament. One evening, a young woman named Delaney, a single mom who had just left an abusive marriage, told Vanessa, "You're the first person who made me believe I'm not ruined." Vanessa hugged her tight. "You're not. You're soil, and soil always has something left to give." Now, when people come to visit the farm, they often ask if it's always been this way, so full of light and love and community. We smile and say no. It was once just a piece of land and 2 people with a dream. But the truth? It was also once the place someone came to after losing everything. And in the losing, she found herself. So when people ask what we grow here, we answer simply, we grow food, we grow second chances, and we grow people.